Okay, so let's talk about that then. So prior to now, a CGM required a prescription from a doctor. Probably not hard to get if you're diabetic, but for the general population who may or may not just be interested in what their blood glucose is doing, that was a different conversation. But now these are coming over the counter, meaning no prescription required. You can just walk into a pharmacy theoretically and purchase one.
Right.
Why would I want to do that?
There's a ton of reasons.
Okay.
There are a ton of reasons. I think that, hey, we have a podcast that talks about health. We sell supplements. We do consultations. We have a pharmacy that's involved. There's all these ways that people can tap into managing their health in different aspects. We've had episodes talking about different biofeedback, resting heart rate variability, all these things that we're really curious to be measuring, and all these ways we're trying to optimize our health. This just feels like another one of those things for people. And then when you have influencers and you have people on, on Instagram and on YouTube who, again, they haven't been diagnosed with anything, but they have these devices and they're using them out of curiosity, it can't help but spark this movement of people who are consuming that content to be equally as curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to sort of complement that, my understanding is that somebody eats food, and we all hear of blood glucose spikes or my blood sugar spikes. And I think that's bad. It's probably not good if my insulin is spiking or my blood glucose is spiking. And this word spike is just...
Yeah, spike sounds bad.
It sounds very bad. And so you now have a device that isn't thousands of dollars, that for $100 a month, $170 a month. And for a lot of people, that's reasonable, that now I can have something that tells me anytime my blood glucose spikes, and I can trace it back to the meal I ate. I can trace it back to if it was a time I was exercising. I can trace it back to a time if I was really stressed. I can link it to a night that I had really poor sleep. And so again, it sounds just like all of those biofeedback things that we've talked about before, with things that can be measured on a smartwatch. And so because of now how easily integrated these systems are into daily life, it's like, well, what's the difference? It's like tracking my steps.
Right.
And so I think with the rest of this conversation, we can shed some light on why I think that it's maybe not at this point, not like tracking steps.
Okay. I don't understand the downside. I want to know that when I do stop at Oakmont Bakery, that there are consequences to that. And I can see these numbers and I can track it and I can put a note on my app and go, that was the eclair.
Yeah.
Don't do that again.
Yeah.
What's the downside to that? Other than the cost, what's the harm in knowing these things?
Off the top, it is low risk. Truly. I can't argue that. I don't think anybody's arguing that it's a low risk device. It's a low risk intervention.
Right.
And again, that's why the FDA now is allowing this to be an over the counter product. And for a lot of people, increasing access to something like this can make a difference, especially if you're somebody who is reluctant to going to the doctor initially. You're like, you know what, I just don't want to go, but if I just buy this device and it nudges me towards a diagnosis, or it nudges me towards making this appointment, seeing a specialist, then maybe that's a good thing.
Sure.
Not arguing that. But in general, the risks, it's not even so much the risks. It's just that, is this really going to be telling us things that we don't already know through traditional testing? And also, is this really going to guide us to make individualized dietary decisions? Is this really going to detect prediabetes sooner than something else? Is it really is that, because why measure it if you can't use it for something actionable?
Is there a way that this can be used without so much hyperfixation on those little details? I mean, is it okay to get this information so long as you take it with a grain of salt and you pay attention to, look, this is just, we're looking at trends, not spikes necessarily?
Eventually, yes, I do. And I think this is where the initial article that you brought up comes in.
Yeah.
once somehow these measurements for the healthy population are just a part of a smartwatch, you're not really making any extra effort to get this measurement. You're not going and setting up a new additional system. Like you're wearing a watch, you're wearing a Fitbit, you're wearing this, and then you added a glucose monitor. Once this is integrated and you're just and it's just a part of kind of the everyday information that you might be looking at, and you're not really making acute decisions about it, especially if you're not working with a healthcare professional or you don't have some really deep understanding of this.
Right.
Then I think that's where eventually I can sleep at night about this whole thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just the idea that there's tons of people going out of their way to use something like this that they probably didn't need to, because again, a lot of this information, if you have a relationship with your PCP, if you're seeing a healthcare provider, if you've had blood work done, if you've been screened for other conditions, if you had your BMI screened, if you've had, your height and weight, for goodness sake, a lot of these things that are already, indicative of other metabolic diseases potentially. If you do all these other things, it's already going to kind of give you the information that potentially a few blood glucose readings on a continuous monitor might. Again,
if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying there are a whole host of signs if blood glucose homeostasis might not be correct for you. There might be some dysregulation. There's a whole host of signs that are going to show up in a whole bunch of different ways. And the likelihood that you and or your doctor are not going to catch it is exceedingly low.
Right.
So it's not like getting an over-the-counter blood glucose monitor is critical for everyone, because if you don't get that, we're never going to find out that you might have these issues. We're going to find out anyway.
Yeah.